Alright, so in this video, we will be talking about some of the Microsoft Excel concepts and functions. So we will understand relative and absolute cell addressing. We will also look at if built-in function, the lookup function, VLookup function, and HLookup function. And the most important in this, in my view, is VLookup, and that's the one I think is used the most. So we are going to explore this next. Okay. So let's start with the if function, and it's pretty straightforward. So what the if function does is that it will check for logical condition and evaluate it if it is true or false, right? And then it will do what it will display whatever you have asked it to display in both the conditions, right? So there will be a logical condition, and then you will give it a value if the logical condition is true, and a value if it is false, right? The value, of course, can be a string, can be a number, can be any of these things. So this is a good example. So if I do this equals to if, and then I compare two cells, right? The values in two cells, and evaluate it. So it will check if A2 is greater than A3, and if it is, which means if condition is true, it will display A2 is bigger. And if it is not true, right, so then it will just simply display A3 is bigger. So it's really simple as that. But to to put a condition there, so greater than is not the only operator there. So we have a whole set of operators here. We can have greater than, less than, equal to, not equals to, and all that. So we have many conditions like these which we can check for. So I can have something like this. So let's say there's a salesperson, right? And there are sales calls and there is total sales, right? So in order to determine if bonus should be given to the employee or not, let's say I want to check for two conditions, and the two conditions are that the sales calls have to be, let's say, greater than 20, right? The person has to have made more than 20 calls, and they should have had more than 15,000 of sales. So I want to have two different conditions. If I were to do this separately, it would be, it will take more time and more typing as well. So I can simply combine them together by using the AND function. Yeah. So the AND function is used like this. So I'm going to say A and D, and then I'm going to enter the conditions with a comma. So condition 1, right, and condition 2. Yeah. So because it is and not or, it will only evaluate true, the whole condition it will evaluate true if both of them are true, right? So if both of them are true, in that case, it will output a true value. And then we are using nested conditions here. So once the output of this, for example, is true, right? So if it is true, I'm using an if here as well. So I'm using if and both in conjunction. Then the value should be yes, right? And if the whole condition evaluates to be false, then the value would be no, right? So in here, I can see here that these three people are not eligible for the bonus. Although this Linda has made more than 15. Linda is not qualified in both the conditions, right? Sorry, one of the condition, because on the first condition, she is more than she is less than 19, right? But she is more than 15,000 sales, right? So that means that and will only evaluate to be true when both of the conditions are true. Okay. But in here, if we see for Joe, for example, his sales scores are more than 20 and his total sales is more than 15,000, and that is why he will definitely get the bonus. Mike will not. Why? Because Mike is not fulfilling both the conditions. His sales are also less than 15,000 and his total calls are also less than 20. Okay, I have an example for you, and it's a real world example. So I would suggest that you uh, implement this in Microsoft Excel. Okay, so what I'm looking for is nested tax calculations, right? And so there should be an if statement, there should be multiplications as well, and they should be combined together, right? So I'm looking for nested functions to be used. Okay, and it should be something like this. The condition should be that if the item, right, that we're talking about, if it is taxable, then add tax to the price. Right, so it is just an example. I suggest you do this, and this will give you more experience. Okay, next we are going to be looking at the lookup functions. So they have many forms and shapes. We have lookups, we have horizontal lookups, vertical lookups. I think the most used one is vertical lookup, so we will look at that. Okay, so what the VLookup function would do is that it would match values in two ranges, right? And if the values match, then it would retrieve a corresponding column that you specify. Okay, so I know that's a mouthful, so I think the best way would be to look at some examples. Okay, but let's analyze this first. So we have the VLookup. Okay, so we will start the function VLookup, and then we will put the lookup value, and this is the source value. What value are we looking for, right? What value are we looking for? Then where are we looking the value for? That is the table, right? What range are we looking the value for? In what range? In which table, right? And once we specify that, then which column do we want to retrieve, right? Let's say the lookup value that we are trying to find matches with the value in the table, right? So once it has matched, then which number column we actually retrieve. So this will specify that column number 1, 2, 3, 4, things like that. And false and true, it would be true if I want an approximate value, right? So let's say I want that if my lookup value approximately matches with my target value, then please give me, return the value to me, right? So in that case, I would like to set it to true. And if it is false, then that means there is no flexibility, right? It will only retrieve the value if it exactly matches the output value. So, but again, let's look at an example, and that would be the best way to analyze this. Okay, so we look at this example. So if we have students and we have the grades for the students, how can we really find the grade point average? Okay, so we will work with this example problem, and along the way we learn about VLookup. We will look at if function as well, and we'll use many more functions. Okay, so let's say we want to find the fail and pass of every student as well. Okay, so we will be definitely using VLookup for that. Okay, date and time, formula, spanning, other sheets. Okay, and some product, that is something we have already used, right? But let's look into it. Dig into an example. So I have a sheet here, and in this sheet I have some sample data. Okay, so I have some course IDs. Yeah, I have some marks that have been obtained by students, so we can write the names of the students right in here. Okay, um, the letter, right? So what is the grade in terms of letter? F, A, B, C, what is that? We can find that. uh, then we have that's the grade points, right? And then we're going to look at the credit hours as well, right? And we're going to find the quality, and with all these calculations we then can find the grade point average. So we have a table in here, right in here, and in the table we have been given the mark, right? So the mark roughly matches the mark we have been given here, not exactly but roughly. And we also have letter. So any person who gets a mark between, let's say, 75 and 80 will get an A minus, right? And any person who gets 90% will get A plus, right? And 85A and things like that. So and then we have every letter also translated into a numerical grade, right? A numerical equivalent. So for example, B would mean a numerical equivalent of 3, right? Similarly, A would mean a numerical equivalent of 4.5, right? So we have been given this already. So for example, the GP, the grade point, have been given to us, so we need to take it there. The letter has been given to us here, so we need to take it there as well. Yeah, we will need it here. So let's start doing this. So it is a classic example where I can utilize VLookup. Okay, so these are my source values. I want to match this somewhere in here, and then these are the columns I want to retrieve. All right, so let's start typing. So equals to VLookup. So VLookup, I entered the function now. Now what is the value I am looking for? Right, I'm looking for these values. I can easily look for each value sort of one by one separately and implement the function every time, or I can give it the whole range. So I can say I'm looking for all of these values. Yep. Then I have the option of making these values either absolute or by reference, right? So I want referenced or absolute. The difference between absolute and reference is that if I make it absolute and then I use the fill handle of Microsoft Excel and I expand this formula, then the formula will still be referring to these exact cells, right? The reference will not move along with it. So to demonstrate this concept of absolute and um, reference cells, let's look at this. So let's say I have 5 and I have, I don't know, let's say 3, okay, and I want to add them up together. So I say that let's also have some more ranges. So 7 and let's say um, 12. Okay, so I have given a pattern, so every time I'm adding 2, right, 5 plus 2 equals to 7, so 2 is being added. So since a pattern is specified, it will keep doing that, so I can simply use the fill handle here. Similarly, I have specified a pattern here as well. So with 3, if we add 9, we will get 12, right? So that means 9 is being added every time. So I can sort of use this pattern as well. So there you go. So 9 has been added every time. So I've got this. Now if I say, please, I want to take this value, which is uh, 010, and I want to add, let's say, this value to it, which is P10, right? The cell address is given right here, okay? And now if I enter, it will, add those values to me for me and give me 74. Yeah. Now, if I use the fill handle and I drag it down, it will add the values, but this time they will be the corresponding values appearing to the left. So in the next, 19 and 66 is being added. Then in the next, 21 and 75 is being added, and so on, right? 29 and 111 is being added, which equals to 140. Yep. So what is happening here is that the values are referenced, right? Which means the reference point will change every time I move, right? So my reference is changing with me. The lower I go, the lower my calculation will also move with me, right? So that is how it will work. If I want to make, I'm just going to remove all these. If I want to make this calculation absolute, so what I'm going to do is that I can come here, right? I can click on the O10, right? Or while I'm just going to remove it and start all over, right? So if I enter equals to, I come here to uh, um, I click on O10, right? But at this point, if I uh, press F4 on my keyboard, right, it will add a dollar sign to my cell address, right? See that? The dollar sign. So that dollar sign means that this value now is absolute. It is not referenced, okay? And then I say plus, right? And I say that now I want this value, which is P10. Let's say I don't want to make P10 uh, um, absolute, right? I want to keep it uh, referenced, okay? So just a point to remember, by default, all values in Microsoft Excel are referenced. They are not absolute. If you want to make them absolute, you either have to manually put the dollar sign with it, right? Or you can press F4 and Microsoft Excel will put the dollar sign for you. So I am just going to close, there's no bracket, so I can just click enter, press enter, and I get 74, which is okay, right? 17 is being added to 57 and I'm getting 74. Makes sense, right? Now, here's the trick. If I do the same thing I did previously, what am I getting? Remember, we were getting 140 previously, because triple 1 plus 29 equals to 140. Why is that not happening? It is not happening because O10 is now an absolute value. So 17 remains the same no matter what. It is now an absolute value. The value of 17 will not change. But this was referenced. I didn't change it to absolute, right? So that means on column P, the value kept changing, but in column O, the value remained the same. Yep, the value remained the same because I made it absolute. How did I make it absolute? By clicking on F4 while my cursor was on in that cell, or you can also manually just put the dollar signs there, just like this. Yeah, I hope you can see this. Yeah, so I'm talking about this. Right. So this is really the concept of absolute and referenced cells. Right, let's keep going. I'm just going to get rid of this. This was just for demonstration purposes. Okay, and let's continue with our problem. So we were talking about VLookup. So E equals to VLookup. What is the range of values I want to look for? So this is the range of values. Yep, and I would like to make it absolute, although I'm not going to use fill handle or anything, so it probably wouldn't matter, but it's a good practice when using VLookup to make it absolute. Okay, so I just made them absolute, so these will not change, right? Uh, which means that if I use the fill handle, these values would remain the same. They will not move along with the fill handle. So now I have entered the lookup value. The next value the Excel function is asking me for is the table array, which means where should I look for this value? And I'm going to say look for this value in here in this table. I just selected the whole table, right? But remember to make sure that the value you are looking for is the first column that you started selecting. Yeah, so I would not want to make it like this. Yeah, if I make it like this, it would start looking it in this column, and there's nothing in this column. Right, am I clear? So make sure you select your table in such a way that the first column that you have selected is the one that you want to match with, right? So I really want to match this column with this column. Okay, so I want to make sure that this 65 hopefully somewhere exists in here, and it does, right? 65 exists in here, right? So that means Excel will be able to match this value for me, right? um, so as I said, I have to make sure that in my table selection, the first selected column is the target column, actually is the one I'm looking for. Okay, so I have done that. Now I should, again, it's in this case it wouldn't matter, but I'm just going to make this absolute as well. right? And I'm going to put another column, comma, and it is asking me for the column index number, right? So as soon as I have selected my uh, um, my table, now an index has been assigned to it. So this is now column 0, then I have column 1, a column 2, and it goes on like this, right? So I have to tell Excel that which column I want to retrieve the data from, right? I can easily choose the same column, right? But what does it matter? Because I already have the value 65, for example, already there. So I don't really need the value from the first column, right? I am actually looking for the letter, right? I'm looking for the letter. I'm looking for this letter. And the letter is in the second column, right? It's in the first column, right? Because this is column 0 and this is column 1, right? This is column 0. Yeah. So I would say that give me column 1. Yeah. And then if I press comma, now I've been asked for an approximate match or an exact match, right? Should I care if it's exact match or approximate match? Well, we need to have an approximate match but for demonstration purposes, for now, let's just go with exact match, which means I will have to make it false. Or in other words, I can enter 0 here. 0 is the same as false, okay? And I can close the bracket and I can press enter. Okay. Okay. So let me make that a 2 to see how it works. Yeah. So there was a slight mistake there. So this was column 1 already, right? So I just made a small mistake in the indexing. So the first column is the column 1, second column is column 2, and I want the values from the second column, right? Second column. So that is why I entered 2 here. I just changed the column index number, right? I made it 2, so I want the second column, and it gave me C+. So 65 equates to the grade of C+, and indeed it does. We can see it from right here. Okay, now to demonstrate my purpose of 0 and 1, I'm just going to use the fill handle and drag it down. See that? What just happened? D matched because 50 was exactly the number 50 percentage was existing there, so it matched to it. 91 didn't match. It's telling me not applied, right? If I look at the error, right? I can go to the error description, but for now, it's just saying that there is a value is not really available in the target range, right? So why? Because 91 doesn't exist here. We have 90, we have 85, right? But we don't really have the exactly 91. So what I would ask it to do is that I'm going to come here and I'm going to change this 0 to 1, right? And 1 would mean true, and true would mean approximate match, right? Approximate match means don't really exactly look for this value. I mean, do look for it, but if you can't find it, I'm okay also with an approximate value. So now if I press enter, uh, well, I just changed this one, so it just remains the same because there was an exact value. Now if I use the fill handle, there you go, I got all my values. So 91 equals to A plus because 91 is really close to 90. That is the closest value it could find in the table, right? So that's why it retrieved A plus for me. Although these values don't really match, but because I have selected 1 here, what 1 would mean approximate match, it still gave me the answer. C plus A minus F makes sense. 49F, yeah, 49, yeah, somewhere here that would be an F, yeah. So that means it makes sense. All right, so next I'm also going to get the GP. That's your grade point. The thing is the grade point, which is also the same as the numerical equivalent, is also given here. So as I can simply just write the VLookup function again, or I can simply copy and paste it. But if I copy and paste it, the values remain the same. This gave me the same value, right? Makes sense. What I can do is that I can simply change this 2 to 3, and this I'm telling it that don't give me the second column, but give me the third column. Give me the value in the third column this time, right? And if I press enter now, I just got my 2.5, right? 65 or C plus equals to 2.5? It does, right? So now I can use the fill handle again, and there you go. I'm facing the same problem because I copied my formula from C plus, and in C plus the value was exact, not approximate. So let me change this to approximate, and now I will just use the fill handle. Sorry, I am going to change it to 0, right? And now I'm going to use the fill handle, and there you go. But seems to be there is some problem, right? So the problem is that I have not used an approximate match. So let's use an approximate match. So I would change it to 1. Yeah. And now if I just use the fill handle, and there you go. So the only thing was that I actually changed it in a different value and then used the fill handle on a different value, and that's why it wasn't really applied. So now it is fixed. And what just happened is very common. You will also face this. Don't be frustrated, and you just have to analyze it again and find out where the problem really is. So now I have my grade point in my letter, right? Letter doesn't really contribute to our calculation, but it was just to demonstrate the functionality of VLookup. Now I need to find the quality, and the quality is just simply a product uh, uh, of my grade point average, sorry, my grade point and my credit hours, right? So I'm going to say equals to this multiplied by this and enter. Remember, because I didn't explicitly make it absolute, by default it is going to stay referenced, which means if I use the fill handle, it will just reference each time, it will reference, its corresponding values. Yeah, the values will change with the fill handle, right? I hope it is clear. So I have done that, and here it is. This is the quality, right? Now, in order to find the GPA, right, I can use, well, let's find the sum of the quality, right? So the sum of quality is simple. I can use the sum function, and I can give it this range, and I can close the bracket and equals to. There you go. I have 54, right? I can also use the same function because it is relative. I can simply copy and paste it here, right? So I did nothing, but I just simply copied and pasted here. Because it was referenced, in this case, it is referencing to this range, the range that is corresponding to it, not this range. Yeah? So you can always do that. So I'm trying to find the GPA, and the GPA is really just the quality divided by the grade point average, right? So I can say equals to the quality, which is 54, divide by um, the grade point, the sum of the grade point, which is 15. We just found that, and I can press enter. That means this person has the grade point average of 3.60. Yeah. So we made use of this sum function because and then we used it. But what if we don't want to do that? What if we want to use the sum product, right? So we can do that. We have to do some manual work here, but it's doable. So I can say that equals to sum product of what? So I'm going to give it my array 1. So I want this to be multiplied, this array to be multiplied with this array, I mean the corresponding values of these two arrays, and once you have multiplied them, then add them together, right? Once you have done that, whatever value I get, please divide it by the sum of the sum of my grade point average, right? My grade point, sorry, sum of my grade points. So now I've got it. I can just simply close the bracket, right? I have to close it twice. No, I don't have to close it twice. When I'm opening there, yeah, it's fine. So I can press enter, and there you go, 360. So I found it both ways, right? Or you can use some product. It's really the same thing. So next, let's try to find whether our person has failed a particular subject or not, right? So we can find that. Let's go to if, can use if here, if What is the logical test I'm looking for? Logical test is this: if the grade point, or yeah, let's say, yeah, the grade point. If the grade point is, let's say, greater than, yeah, 2.5, I am I'm finished with the logical test, so I am gonna enter a comma. And now what will be the value if it is true? So I'm gonna enter a string, so I have to close it in quotes, and in these quotes I'm going to enter yay, I don't know, yay, um, I don't know, great work, I guess. Okay, and if not so great, let's say it is less than 2.5, so then I would say, um, let's say boo. Okay, so I'm closing this and I am going to enter. Yeah, so every time the grade point was greater than 2.5, which happened only in two cases, 4 and 5 here, it says great work, and in other cases it says boo, right? Uh, um, why it was exactly, if it was exactly 2.5, the condition was still false. Why was that? It was because we used the greater sign. Yeah, we can always use the greater and equals to if you want. If you want to, if you want it to include 2.5 as well, so we can use greater than or equals to. We just modified it. So hopefully now these two 2.5s will also be included in it. Yeah, so there you go. Now if I use the fill handle, so now I have the ones which are either more or equal to 2.5. All of them are great work. Otherwise it is boo. Okay, so let's look at another example as well. This is pretty much done. I think the concept of VLookup should be pretty clear to you now. If it is not, please feel free to email me or talk to me in class, and I will be glad to help you. Okay, so let's look at another example. Um, in fact, I should let you guys do this. So it is pretty simple. What I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to make an invoice kind of setup, right? So I can enter product ID here. That product ID should match with my inventory, right? So in my inventory, if I see here, I have different product IDs, right? So if I were to enter, let's say, product 5 here, I'm just going to enable it. So if I enter 5 here, right, I should automatically get what is the description of the product ID 5 based on this table, and what is the quantity. I will have to enter that manually, the quantity, but the unit price, again, I would like it to be retrieved from this table automatically, again using VLookup. Once I'm done with that, I will get the subtotal. Subtotal, of course, we just be simple multiplication of this and this. You can use the fill handle. Then you can get the subtotal. Again, it's always confusing for me because there are two subtotals. But hey, so this subtotal will just add all of these together, and I'll get a subtotal here, and then I'll get calculate the tax. How will I calculate the tax? I can calculate the tax by multiplying my subtotal with my tax rate here, which is 13%. So I'll get some form of tax, and then as a final step, I can add my tax with my subtotal, and I will get my total here. Yeah, so this is what you are expected to do. You will have to use VLookup in this scenario. And by the way, don't be afraid by, oh, this is a different sheet, right? It really doesn't matter, right? If I, let's say, I'm using VLookup, right, and I'm, let's say, using some sort of values here, I can just simply, when the table array part comes in, I can simply click on the other sheet, which is the name of the sheet is video game inventory. I can click on that, and I can simply select my table that I want. Yeah, and I can close. I mean, with comma, I can go to the next one. Let's say I want the second, and then 0. Yeah. Well, just to show you, of course, is NA not applied because there was nothing there, but it's just for your idea. So what it will do is that it will, of course, um, take the value from you, the value you are looking for, right? And when it comes to the target table where it is searching for the value, it would just input the sheet name and then the table range in that sheet. Simple as that. And you didn't have to, you can of course enter these things manually, but you don't have to. When you click on that sheet, so if I would just to remove this and show you once again, right? So let's say we look up and I'm looking for these values. Let's say there are some values here. I'm looking for these values in what? I'm looking for these values in this sheet. So I'm going to click on this first and then select the table. Okay, now if I check, it has already entered the sheet name for me. I just simply clicked on it and it added it for me. So there's pretty much no difference when you have to add a value from the same sheet or a different worksheet, I mean a different spreadsheet, or even a completely different worksheet. I mean a different file name, right? A different, completely different Excel file. It would still not matter. So it should be pretty straightforward. So I expect you guys to complete this, and I will just put it on DC Connect for you. And once you're done with it, I'll put one more example as well. Then I can in the class we can discuss it, and or if you have any questions or problems, we can always talk about it. All right, so here it is. This is sort of a homework for you. It is not graded. It is just for your practice, okay? And for me to be able to help you with this, because if you don't do this, you will not know what you don't know, right? So if you do this, you will find out where are your weaknesses. If you don't understand something the right way, I will be able to help you. So this is it for now, and all the best.